So this session is the mayor's favorite meeting, scaling performance management as a service in South Bend. So our presenter is David Finley. He's the director of data and performance for the city of South Bend. So David will walk through how South Bend transformed traditional stat meetings into lean data huddles, delivering measurable improvements in city service delivery. So thank you, David.
All right, thank you. Hi, I'm David. I am curious, the word performance management, who feels like they is responsible for either performance management for their organization or their teams? Just by a show of hands. What does, I feel like performance management can cover a lot of different range of topics. I've been working with the city for about 7 years and spanned multiple mayoral administrations about that. And so we're going to talk about our performance management journey and how we've evolved it into what we call a performance management as a service model. For us, performance management looks like supporting kind of a quasi-operational nature around multiple city departments and teams. So kind of really runs the gamut across a lot of different city services, and excited to share that a little bit with you today. So we're going to talk about how we launch quick, high-value executive data briefings. We're going to talk about something called the danger zone. It's provocative, and how we think about that and use that to have targeted analytics to trigger executive action, and how we've worked on transitioning our data team at the city from report builders to strategic partners. I've already talked about myself a little bit, but I guess I just thought it might be helpful to ground, like performance management can be housed in lots of different places depending upon the organization. And I find it to be something that's really, really dependent on the culture of where you work. And so our team, we're a part of our city's innovation and technology department. We're a 6-person team. We do performance management work. We also do program evaluations. We do process improvement. We manage the city's GIS environment, and then we do a lot of data transparency work. I hope you can see some of how those interrelate, but that also, I guess I see the opportunity of our team housing a lot of that work, maybe in particular, the combination of performance management and process improvement, and performance management and process improvement in a software implementation context or a technology context really positions our team well to do cool performance management work. And then our team is comprised of business analysts. So to give you a sense of kind of like competencies at work here, business analysts, data engineers, and GIS specialists. So Hannah and John and Thomas are here at the conference. I told them to not come to this session, and they thankfully are here at other work, but say hi to them. And David 2.0, or David Yang, a lot of his work powered what we're about to talk about. And Matthew, I'm very proud of them being a part of our team. I do want to talk about our story. So what I hope you get from this session is, hey, how can we do very quick, high-value data briefings so we can, A, use that to drive real impact or process improvement within a city team, but also how that can be leveraged into getting good executive buy-in or executive sponsorship so you can do more cool work. And this was, I guess I might have mentioned, I've been with the city for about 7 years and spanned multiple mayoral administrations. So we have been on a journey. So I wanted to ground that. We're going to talk a little bit about how we started with kind of performance management meetings. We felt they were very good for a while, but felt they gained bloat, and how we transformed that into lean data huddles and had that as a solution, and what we learned from that. And then how we've transformed that into using additional targeted analytics to trigger executive action and have positioned as a performance management as a service model. So this is how at least I see our journey of like rise and impact and lessons learned. And hopefully we're doing even more this year. And so that's why I have a big question mark. And I'll talk about what's next for our team at the end of this session. But the first problem, talking about our bloated performance management culture, was that we had a lot of data, but potentially so much data it was hard to get to insight, or potentially have very long meetings that didn't necessarily translate into decision making. And so for us, we had a quarterly performance management model. If you're familiar with a stat model, some of you may not be. It's more common in a city government context or a local government context, but a stat model, we use that borrowing from Citystat and CompStat. And for us, they were a heavy lift on our team, where we spent a lot of time building decks and training teams to present data to the mayor and chiefs of staff. And I think they were all very well received meetings, but not a lot of action or true operational impact was happening out of them. It was a very strategically focused program. And because of maybe that overemphasis on strategy and less emphasis on operations, it became less relevant for our new mayoral administration. And so this is what we were working with, where we had long meetings with long time horizons. It was a heavy lift on our data team, where our data team was doing a lot of the work rather than the folks in the field or the folks on the front line. We had lots of rehearsals, so a lot of time investment in prepping for these meetings that weren't delivering a lot of impact. And I guess I stole my thunder. And because I would say they were very polished conversations, there was fewer decisions or fewer changes happening as a result of these meetings. So we pivoted to going from regular quarterly meetings with a big group to more email, data pipeline reporting, very quick wins that we could use either performance targets. So if we were missing a performance targets, that would trigger a meeting, but didn't have a meeting for the purpose of having a meeting. We had went from focusing on kind of cross-departmental work to truly a mix of mayoral projects and department-specific performance management. So really supporting the frontline teams where they saw they could use data and performance management work, not solely kind of where the mayor's office wanted to position things. We went from where a lot of work was championed by our department to a combination of work delivered by our team and then championed by the city teams we're supporting. So teams like our public works department, our code enforcement department, teams like that, and positioned ourselves from a strategically focused performance management program to overall a more operationally focused performance management program. I guess one question I do have for the group, how many folks have been involved either like a stat meeting type structure in your agency or your department or your team, or even if you didn't call it stat, some of how I've described it felt familiar by just a raise of hands? Great, thank you. It looks like a few folks in the group. So yeah, our quote unquote first solution was Data Huddles. So very quick with I guess I'll start down here in terms of format, very quick and to the point to be like, here's the data. What are we going to do about it? 30-minute briefings that are focused on operational data and progress towards goals. And so the purpose of the meeting was to review the data and for everyone to have an opportunity to shape next steps and offer next steps in response to that data. Because this is on the visualization track, I will break down. I'll have a bigger picture of what this view looks like and how we think about it. The goals of these meetings was just to have a sense of quote unquote, I know what's going on. I guess maybe one negative byproduct of moving away from some of these cross-departmental conversations is that each department was kind of generating their own narratives on their own. And so we created these data huddles in part to make sure that the narratives that were being shared by departments was grounded in data, and that giving folks relevant city leadership an opportunity to shape or contribute to the goal. So who's in our data huddles? It's our mayor, it's our chiefs of staff for the mayor's office, it's department heads, and then it's some of the frontline directors in support of those teams. For this particular data huddle focused on city service requests, this is our most ambitious tool, or at least cross-departmental tool. So and I'll explain a little bit more how the data pipeline works, but it is focused on all resident-initiated service requests. We centralize in this dashboard and talk about in our data huddles. So this touches streets and sewers teams, it touches our solid waste team, it touches our code enforcement team, and a couple of other different teams. to talk about what the data that's in what we're tracking in this centralized tool. I imagine a lot of you feel like, how do I get data to be on one page, or how do I make it as concise but in depth as possible in a way that's understandable? We are not perfect in doing this, but this is our attempt to do that. What we track in our one pager is the brass tacks. So this is a monthly recurring meeting. So what we share is what's happening right now. So we're looking at how many of our service requests, how many are completed on time, how many, from a median standpoint, how many days it takes to close a service request, and number of service requests created and closed. And then we also have incentives of trying to shift folks away, residents away from calling our 311 office and using our online portal. So we also track that as well. We focus on the context. This is something that our teams will bring up a lot that we support. So it's not solely like, this is great, what's happening right now. Is what happening right now normal or expected? And so that's why we track month over, how does the data from this month compare to last month? Or how does the data from this time this year compare to the same time last year? And share that from a trends perspective. We talk about the priorities. So I think in the last session, I use this phrase all the time with my team, boiling the ocean. We don't want to boil the ocean, so we try to focus and drill in on what do residents actually care about. So we tend to focus on the most commonly requested service types that we have all of the data. So looking at a focus on the top 5 and then comparing these same types of kind of performance calculations in response to that. And then at least from a city context, this is always very helpful, the map. Where are we seeing differences in response time depending on where we're responding to in the city? And so to walk you through a moment, what we have for our one pager on the service request data huddle, I guess I don't expect, especially for folks in the back, I was sitting in the back, you probably can't really see this very well, but I'll just kind of orient you a little bit to how some of this data can be read. And so these top line indicators are showing the brass tacks, what's happening right now. And I guess I think I have little pop-ups happening here. We're showing, hey, right now for this reporting period, for this last month, here's what's happening across our different teams. Then for each of these quote unquote, what is happening right now, we have month over month or year over year comparisons to basically orient you, okay, is what's happening right now good? Is it not good? How does it compare to, are we seeing an influx? But that is, I guess like maybe to use a specific example, it always seems like our solid waste team is struggling a little bit during the month of January, when in fact, if you compare this January to last January, it's the same performance because they're responding to Christmas tree pickups. So like basically, is what's happening normal or not? Here is our deep dive into the priority service requests. So really focusing in on what do residents actually caring about, and then just having your classic kind of, are we doing well in our response times to that? And the map, I hope that's the most understandable. This is actually we struggled a lot with this, or this was maybe more challenging than it appears, in the sense that this is focused on neighborhoods. We don't quote unquote have true neighborhoods in South Bend, or at least like politically agreed upon neighborhoods. And so oftentimes we've had to use census tracts or zip codes, but that doesn't really give you that level of granularity that's helpful. And so this was our work to give department heads and the mayor and city leadership quick insight on, are we serving the east side of town better than the west side of town? If so, why is that? Questions like that. I will talk, how am I doing on time here? I'm going to walk you through the data pipeline. I always kind of hate these slides when I see them. I feel like a lot of vendors will use this at time, and it's always like, oh, a lot of icons, and I kind of understand what's happening. But I think in this case with the data audience, it's important. So for our data pipeline for these tools, we have resident initiated service requests, so calls into our 311 office or into city teams. That is then handled and liaisoned by our 311 department. They use our CRM to track that data. All of those work orders or service requests gets dispatched out to different city teams. So we use lots of different softwares to track those work orders. And then our team pools all of that data back together in a data lake. So we do all of the transformation via SQL to put that data back together and kind of ground it in this consistent performance management framework so we can see all of these different data types together. And then that becomes what our transformation tool for our Power BI dashboard. I do talk about this meeting teams where they are, and the fact that we do put the burden of data transformation and data work on our team. So we have the city teams we support work with the softwares that they think is best, and then we put the burden on our team to do the transformation work in the back end to weave all of those different work order types back together. The second problem, quote unquote, that we uncovered after we launched these data huddles was that the data huddles were effective. People liked them, but we weren't necessarily always getting a lot of action still in response to them. And that was really what we were aiming for, was not just reporting, but how can we actually lead to impact for the city? And this is some of the kind of our highlights of what led to our next discovery of looking at the danger zone or creating the danger zone, in that decision fatigue is real. Having lots of different data huddles can be helpful, but when you're working with executives that are constantly making decisions, it can be hard to process a lot of this good data and then immediately start making decisions. How do we make that easier for them? And the bottleneck for us wasn't just trying to get to insight, quote unquote. It was to make things as easy as possible or as straightforward as possible for a leader to ask a team to look at a process and make improvement. How do you make that decision point as obvious and straightforward as possible? And that's what led us to the danger zone. I hope folks do recognize that this is taken with some levity. In fact, I don't know what we were planning to call it, but in our data team, we just started talking about it as the danger zone. I'll first define what it is and then talk a little bit how we led to calling it this way. But the danger zone is basically a diagnostic view of our most critical service delivery gaps. So a service request enters the quote unquote danger zone if it has been below an on-time completion rate of 90% for at least 3 months. And then we also rank things by volume. And so this is really to get at, to define it's a little bit more clearly in this slide of, oftentimes if a team is struggling to hit 90% and we aren't actually getting a lot of complaints about it, it's not necessarily that. It can be that there's a performance issue there that we need to support out, but it also could be a software glitch. Potentially something is not happening from a data backend that's getting to this lesser than result. There's a staffing gap, or what we've actually found out a lot is that there's a service request that hits multiple teams and there's a broken handoff point that's happening. And so we have this danger zone diagnostic criteria to say, this means if you're in this zone, you need more support than just kind of coming to a meeting and say, do better. You need to do your team to do better. The broader city team should be able to support you as well, because this is a broader goal and potentially touching multiple units across the city. And so when a service request hits the danger zone, our data huddles quickly move to why. Is it something seasonal happening, equipment failure, or staff vacancy? And then can we do some sprint level support from our process improvement arm from our team to help resolve the performance gap? And so the goal, if something hits the danger zone and we prioritize it for additional support, is to have it, that service request by the next data huddle, get above that 90% goal. And just to share a little bit about, we talked about this internally as the danger zone, and then one of the analysts said, let's just call it that, and we are just calling it that. I also think, I hope that kind of communicates to some level, at least from a culture perspective at the city of South Bend, is that this is something we're in together. It's not our data team calling out another team, but it's a problem we're all trying to solve together across the city. I won't dwell a lot on the danger zone view, because I don't think, though I think the data visualization is important, I think the more important thing is the conversation that happens in response to it. But I did share This is our danger zone view, so it's obviously potentially looks very familiar. You're able to filter by city team or specific service type. But basically, if something hits the danger zone, you see it in this list here. You're able to see how we're tracking for the past month, the 3 months that something is involved in to qualify for the danger zone. And you're also able to see various trend level metrics. And we've actually found that a lot of our quote unquote service types that are hitting the danger zone are it's typically not like a nosedive and cratering for a few months. It's typically been a consistent between like 60 and 85%. And so that's why we're trying to work with those teams to unlock potentially a persistent issue that isn't necessarily about willpower, but potentially about either capacity or technological support. But the focus for the data huddle will shift immediately into looking at service requests in the danger zone, and then we have various trend lines to look at that as well. I do want to talk about the blueprint, so how we partner with other city teams. So our team, if something hits the danger zone, we prioritize a service request and then work with the mayor, the chief of staff to say, which one should we focus on this month in terms of getting it above and out of the danger zone. And these are the different services our team is able to offer to those teams to help get their service requests out of the danger zone. So because of our process improvement background, one of our go-to moves is process mapping work. So making sure there's good SOP, kind of like bread and butter issues of good standard operating procedures or good awareness on how does this process actually work? What is the ideal state versus how our things are working? And I think a lot of times out of those conversations, you identify a lot of good process improvement opportunities right there. Quote unquote dark data support. So sometimes there may be identification of a digitizing and cleaning data that our team can be helpful with. We don't want to be in the business of doing that all the time. We want to make sure those teams are equipped to do that themselves. But if there is a backlog or a tool we can develop to scrape PDFs or get data out of emails, potentially using our broader Microsoft environment to build them a data capture tool that they can use going forward, that's something we can resolve in our sprint level support. Sometimes it's a problem with our intake process. So basically the way we've designed for residents to ask for help doesn't get us the information we need. And so that requires some updates there. And then lastly, capacity analysis. So making sure of the demand we're getting and the staff support that we have to respond to a particular request, is it actually feasible for the team to hit a certain performance target or expectation that's expected of them? Just to close out, getting towards the end here, as I mentioned, I think performance management and how it works for your agency or your organization is so central to the culture. So this is why the culture of your organization or agency, this is why it's worked for us. It helped move from these bloated performance management meetings that were very, very polished, that made it hard for folks to engage. We moved that from a high stakes performance to a low stakes routine. Our data team is more of a facilitator. So it's to say, here's the data. We can ask questions and routinize the data. Our team is not delivering a lot of the content and becoming the authority in what the data means. And at least what I've seen, some executives are very confident all the time. Some are not. Some are a little bit overwhelmed or potentially a little shy, might not be the right word, but at least reserved around asking questions when there's a lot of data presented, because a lot of the subject matter experts are in the room and they don't want to appear as incorrect. This routinized approach and making things very obvious and clear has made it, we've at least seen more engagement out of some of our executives in asking questions and really engaging with the performance management process. And then we've seen actual results in terms of our improvements. So our solid waste team is awesome. And it was actually a funny moment where we actually were able to identify a performance gap happening, and our solid waste director was not aware of it and was surprised by it. And because she takes her work so seriously and because the data was so clear, that immediately resulted in a 20% improvement on a month-over-month basis. Our pothole reporting accuracy has skyrocketed. Our teams, it's a lot of that work also was just data improvement work. So where city street crews were still using either broken iPads or paper in some cases, so we were able to change some of how they were reporting their pothole response and improved accuracy there. And then what's happening now, our mayor's office really enjoyed these meetings. It makes it very easy and quick and light load for them. And so I joke with my team a little bit sometimes in that we've done too good of a job at least giving value to that team. And so now we have a few more huddles we're scoping out this year. So something we're launching next week is what we're calling our vulnerable outreach and response data huddle that's focused on our vulnerable populations and in particular some of our unhoused populations. And then we're also launching a data huddle next month, a recurring data huddle that we're calling venues VPA impact, our venues parks and arts department impact, and where we're tracking data around that particular area. Kind of, it's like your combination of a classic parks and recreation department with some elements of performing arts theater and arts work in the city. But that is our story, and where we have new huddles and expanded role. It is something where we'll see how it goes this year. I think something that we're going to continue to work on as we expand is that we have really strong theories of change that we're anchoring to, and not just giving data out for data's sake. And I just thought I would end on this note. I don't expect you to be able to read a lot of this information, but this is how we approach performance management in South Bend. So just as a super high level, we have our data huddle work. So that's our recurring meetings, whether it's quarterly or monthly with the mayor's office and kind of relevant city leadership. Then we have a lot of program evaluation work and KPI reporting. And then we have a lot of public transparency tools that are on this far side here. That's everything from me.